Fabulous. Welcome to the Hope and Healing with Terry podcast. I'm your host, Terry Donahue, a mental health professional who is certified in trauma informed care and crisis intervention. This is a space for women going through healing while raising the next generation. We will talk about things such as trauma, online dangers, and family patterns, always with a sprinkle of grace, a dash of hope, and a whole lot of Jesus. So, I'm so glad that you're here today. We are going to get started. So, shame is one of the biggest barriers to healing. So, if you've been through any type of trauma or anything like that, shame tends to be the biggest barrier to that in a lot of times. So, after trauma, shame can keep people stuck. So, what is shame? Shame is, I'm actually going to read you dictionary.com's version of what shame is. So, let me have my phone out here. I had it pulled up, but my phone just did an update. So, hopefully, we will still find it. And I probably should have looked before starting the podcast because now I don't see it pulled up anymore. But you know what? We will look it up. So, dictionary.com and shame. So, y'all get to see me play on my phone basically. Okay. So, according to dictionary.com, shame is the painful feeling arising from the consciousness of something dishonorable, improper, ridiculous, etc., done by oneself or another. Another thing that is susceptibility to this feeling, disgrace, a fact or circumstance bringing disgrace or regret. So, kind of a big definition for shame, but shame is basically a feeling. It's a feeling of feeling worthless. It's a feeling of rejection, a desire to hide maybe yourself or what you did or what happened to you. It can be withdrawing, so withdrawing from friends, family, situations, all kinds of things like that. Shame, is associated with secrecy. So shame thrives in secrecy and isolation, and it can trigger people to be explosive or to have angry outbursts, and it can lead some people to risky behaviors. So John 3:20 and 21, 3:20 to 21, shame thrives in darkness, healing comes in light. Okay? So, shame often grows out of painful experience, which can be abuse. It can be trauma. Not all trauma is abuse, but there's a lot of people who've experienced abuse. But it can also be bullying. Like if you were treated poorly in school, there's a lot of bullying now. There's a lot of online bullying. So, all of that can lead to shame. At first, when something happens to you, you might think, um, that's not okay. So you might realize it's not normal, it shouldn't be happening. But then eventually, if it's something that's continuing to happen to a person over and over again, they might start thinking that it's their fault. And that feeling of it being their fault can lead to shame. And over time, that can affect confidence, it can affect self esteem, and it can strip the confidence and the self esteem away, like gone, right? So it's really a big barrier to people, which is why it can affect healing. So, according to Baker's Evangelical Dictionary of Biblical Theology, that's a big word to say, but according to them, shame is relational. Okay, shame emphasizes sin's effect on self-identity. So, shame affects your identity, affects the fact how you feel about yourself. It affects how you think other people feel about you. Doesn't mean that that's how they think about you, but it affects how you think they feel about you. But, and I know when it says it talks about shame is sin and things like that, you're thinking, well, you already thought, well, this was my fault, like I did it. No, 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 no. Ezekiel 18:20 tells us survivors are not responsible for others' sin. So if you were abused, if you were bullied, if something you were in some tragic trauma that happened to you, it's not your fault. You're not at fault for that. Like something happened to you. And sometimes taking on shame is basically taking on how the other person should feel, the person who hurt you, not necessarily how you feel. But shame, it's relational. It affects relationships. It affects how we cope. Um, do you know anyone who's a perfectionist? That could be related to shame. I definitely know some people like that. It can cause people to have emotions that are out of control. Okay. It may be acting in ways that somebody regrets, like maybe doing something and regretting it later, or taking risky behaviors. I work with some people who take risky behaviors. I mean, and a lot of the people that I work with, they do have shame, and shame does affect their healing. But one of the things I like to help them understand is it's not really their shame to bear. What happened to them is not their fault. I once had somebody ask me, um, she had been raped. Probably should have done a disclosure at the beginning of this, right? But she had been assaulted, and she asked me if it was her fault. And I said no. And this wasn't a client of mine, it was someone that, kind of knew what I did and asked me questions. And I told her it wasn't. And so, but she's lived with that shame where the person who hurt her made her think that it was her fault, but it was not her fault. Okay. So, we're going to kind of talk about someone who experienced shame in the Bible. It's probably a story that you've heard about. You probably haven't given it much thought. I mean, I'll be real, I've heard about it multiple times in my lifetime, right? But it's nothing that I ever stopped and thought about until I started working on this podcast about shame. So, in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, we learn about the woman who had a bleeding problem. Okay. She bled for 12 years. You heard that right. 12 years, not 12 days, not 12 months, 12 years. Okay. And so back in that time, in the culture of that time, which you can kind of read about in Leviticus, but that would be considered unclean. Okay, so anyone who came in contact with her would be unclean. If you're unclean, you cannot be around the other people. You cannot go to the synagogue. You cannot go to the market. You cannot go to any of the things. You are basically ostracized and by yourself because you're unclean. So anyone who had touched her or anything, they would also be considered unclean and not welcome in public spaces. Okay, so Luke 8:43 tells us she spent all her money on doctors and treatments, yet she got worse. She did not get better. So she lost all of her money. So she kept paying these doctors and I don't know, all kinds of medicine people, right, for treatments to try to help her get better, and it wasn't working. So if she spent all that money at that time, she would have been considered poor. So from the Bible, what we know about her is kind of limited. We know that she's divorced. We know that she's ostracized because, again, anyone who's coming near her is going to be considered unclean. Okay. She was unclean. Okay. She was not welcome in public. So she couldn't go to her local church, and she couldn't go to her local synagogue, and she couldn't go hang out with her friends in the square. Like, she's ostracized. Like, nobody wants to be around her. And so let's think about religious people back in the day and religious people today. Okay. And you might recognize someone you know or even yourself. And I'm not saying anything bad about anyone, but think about sometimes how we think of someone if they're going through a bad situation. We might think something, what did she do wrong? Why is God punishing her? Or her sin must be big. Okay. So think about that when you're getting your hair done or nails done or just talking with your friends. Think these are conversations that people have. So back in that day, the women, the men, they're all sitting around. They're like, oh my goodness, what did she do to be bleeding for 12 years? Like, God must be really punishing her, right? But Matthew 7 warns us about judging others. Basically, why are you judging when you have your own sin? So people asking those questions are not really thinking about the things that they may have done wrong. But who said she sinned? I mean, let's be real. We've all sinned. Like, that's just part of the world. Like, none of us are perfect. Not even me, not even you. So there is sin, but it's not like sin caused her to be bleeding for 12 years. So let's talk about her a little bit further. So Jesus is in a crowd of people. When he's speaking, like, crowds gather to come and see him. Okay. So she thought, oh my goodness, if I can just get close enough to touch his robe, I don't even have to touch him. But if I can get close enough to just touch his garment, I will be healed. Okay. So she knew she wasn't allowed around the people. She knew that she was considered unclean, but she went. She went and she snuck in. So she hid among the crowd basically, and she like goes towards Jesus. And again, she believed if I could just touch any part of him, I will be healed. Okay. So she went and she got a hold of his garment. Okay. And she touched him. and she felt different. Okay. But Jesus asked, "Who touched me?" Not because he didn't know, it's because shame hides in the darkness. Maybe he wanted to bring her out of the darkness, but I don't think that he was doing that to embarrass her. So shame can oftentimes make us feel like we're self-focused. We are thinking about how people see us rather than knowing how somebody sees us. Okay. So we may perceive that someone, because of feelings that we have for ourselves, may feel that somebody else feels that way, whether they do or they do not. Okay. So shame is self focused, it's an internal feeling of social isolation and social failure. So people who feel a lot of shame, they feel like they're basically kind of ostracized maybe in public, not quite like she was, but maybe they feel like they're not welcome, maybe they feel like someone's talking about them, or you see people talking, you're like, oh my goodness, they must be talking about me and what I did or what I've been through, but chances are they're not, and they may not even know what you've been through or what you've done. So let's talk about some of the things that are associated with shame, or we say linked to shame. Social anxiety, major depression, substance abuse. Eating disorders can be associated with shame, self harm, stigma. All of these are things that can be related to shame. When you feel shame, these are also things that it affects your mood, it affects how you feel about yourself, it affects how you feel other people feel about you. So, when shame is addressed, these symptoms are likely to lessen, maybe even go away completely. And if you have chronic shame, like you're constantly feeling shame, like it's heavy on you and you're constantly feeling it, it can lead to things like emotional numbing. It can impair your emotional regulation, how you respond to something, and it can cause trouble with social engagement. You may not know how to act in public. I know that sounds terrible, but you may not respond in a way that people would typically expect you to. Okay. And it's not intentional. It's just your body, you're having that social anxiety, you're having that depression, you're having that bad feeling about yourself, you're thinking everyone's talking about you. There's so many things that can happen. If you have shame that is just constantly at you, it's constantly contributing to every day of your life, that can lead to things like depression and obesity, and even autoimmune disorders, because your body is responding to the stress that is being put on it through shame. Okay. And let's talk about, maybe something didn't happen to you. Maybe it happened to one of your parents. You grew up in a house with a parent who experienced shame. That's still going to affect you. Okay. If you have a child who's growing up in a house and maybe you experience shame and you're having effects from it, that child feels it. They may not know the shame and they may not know what happened, same with you, but that generation trauma, it's a learned behavior and your child is still being affected by it. Just like when you were growing up, if you grew up in a house like that, you were affected by it. Okay. So what does healing look like? So we've talked about shame. We know kind of what it is. We can see kind of how it affects our body. But what does healing look like? Healing looks like acceptance, accepting yourself, loving yourself. Maybe even feeling accepted out in the world, but that's just oftentimes a perception. So I'm more about how you feel accepted. Belonging, like if you're out with a group of friends, do you feel like you belong with a group of the friends? Do you feel like the outcast? It's more about belonging. Connecting with others. If you're able to connect with others, chances are, if you've experienced shame, it's harder for you to connect with people. When you start healing that part of your body, it's easier for you to connect. And then a big one is letting go of fear. Okay. Shame causes you to have a lot of fear. So, Genesis 3, God moves towards the shamed, not with an accusation, rather with an invitation. So, a lot of people who feel shame, they think they're not welcome by God. We think if we done something so terrible, God doesn't welcome us. He doesn't want us. But that's not what we're actually taught in the Bible. So, John 3:16, Jesus came basically to save the world, right? But in John 17 or 3:17, it says he came not to condemn the world. So Jesus didn't come to condemn us, and we're not here to condemn one another either. So Jesus came with an invitation to a relationship with him. So let's go back to Jesus calling her out. He asked, "Who touched me?" And again, I'm going to ask you, do you think that he did that to shame her or to embarrass her? I'm going to tell you, I don't. I don't think that. So by calling her out, he's ending the secrecy. She came into the crowd. She hid in the crowd. She didn't want to be seen because she wasn't welcome in the crowd. Okay. She had shame and she was ostracized by the people there. She wasn't welcome. Okay. But he brought her out of the darkness and into the light. Okay. Shame thrives in isolation and secrecy, and he brought her out. She knew, again, if she just got close enough to touch any part of him, even as small as a garment, she would be healed. And she did. She touched his clothes. And as soon as she touched him, Jesus knew that healing left his body. Okay. And again, she didn't touch him. She just touched his clothes. Like she got close enough to him to just touch him. She had the faith that if I could just get close enough to him, close enough to touch any part of him, I will be healed from 12 years of bleeding. Okay. So she got close enough. And so let's think about this. She hid in the crowd. Okay. How do we hide today? How do people hide shame? Avoidance? Do you avoid things? Um, what about hiding? Do you hide? Do you hide from other people? Do you hide from yourself? Do you hide from situations? What about people pleasing? Ooh, that's a big one. Um, what about people pleasing? Do you try to keep everyone around you happy? Is that kind of how you handle your shame? Like people won't be mad at you if you keep everyone happy. Ooh, what about anger? Some people handle it by getting angry. And then again, we have those perfectionists who just need everything to be perfect. That is their way to control something. And another thing about perfectionism that you may not know is if you have some perfectionism tendencies or you know someone who does, if they grew up in a house with chaos or if they've been through something traumatic, maybe at that time they couldn't be in control of anything. Like you look at kids of abuse, um, they weren't in control. Some of them weren't even in control of their own body, and so they they perfectionism or even an eating disorder and things like that. That's you controlling. You're controlling your intake and your outtake. You're controlling the environment around you. So trauma can definitely cause perfectionism. So let's talk about some things that people try to heal, use to try to heal from their trauma today, from their shame, we'll say. What about self-reliance? I don't need anybody. I don't need anybody at all. Take care of it all by myself. I don't need you. Okay, self-reliance. What about success? People who work, never take any time off. They're just like, if I get this promotion, if I get this, if I do that, it'll all be great. It'll all be perfect. What about pleasure? Going, doing whatever pleasures you, whatever makes you happy, right? Or shopping. Some people use shopping. That's your coping mechanism. It makes you happy. What about entertainment? If I could just keep myself entertained all the time, I don't have to think about or deal about anything that's happening to me. Okay. What about religion? Some people turn to religion. There's so many different things that people turn to, but the truth is, there's only one place that you really truly get healing, and that's through Jesus. Okay. When you feel outcast or in need of healing, there's one person you can cry out to. Cry out to Jesus. Let him be the friend you talk to, the one you trust. So, again, we talked about shame grows in isolation. And not everybody has a trusted friend or therapist or somebody that they can talk to or that they feel comfortable with. But you know what? Jesus already knows what happened and he's not telling anybody, like at all. So, if you want to cry out to someone, that is a great place to go. Okay. And let me give you a little food for thought. If avoiding embarrassment is your biggest goal in life, then who are you serving? Are you serving God or are you serving pride? That's kind of a big one for you to think about, but I'm going to say pride probably. And there are people who go to church week after week and month after month and year after year, and they kind of bump into Jesus, right? But there's a difference between going to church in bumping into Jesus and hearing about Jesus and having a relationship with him. Those are not the same thing, because you can make it look good. You can maybe even know people, maybe it's yourself, who go to church every week and they look like they have the greatest life and they have it all together. But on the inside, they feel that hurt. They feel that anger. They feel that shame. And they don't feel that close connection with God. They don't have that relationship. But it's that relationship, that real, true connection that helps heal. So we're going to come back to her. I know I keep talking about the woman who was bleeding, but again, she knew if she could just get close enough to touch any part of him. So let me ask you, where do you need healing? Where do you feel shame? Where do you feel hurt? Do you have the faith that if I could just touch Jesus, if I could just touch any part of him, I would be healed? She had that faith. And so let me ask you, she went into this crowd and she touched him. She got close enough to touch a little piece of his robe. Do you think that that was faith, or do you think that was fear? Do you think she had to overcome fear with faith to go do that? I mean, I wasn't there, but I'm going to say she probably was afraid. I mean, anytime you do something that is scary, and that had to be scary. So again, we know a little bit about her. We know a little bit about the culture. She wasn't welcome. People knew who she was. She was ostracized. She was outcast. But she had the faith, if I could just get close enough, if I could just get to him, I'll be healed. And so she went into the crowd. And when he asked, who touched me? The disciples were like, Jesus, hey, we're in a crowded place. There's thousands of people here. Everybody's touching you. But the difference is he knew when she touched him because he felt the healing leave his body. Okay. And so again, he didn't call her out to embarrass her. He called her out and he called her daughter. Okay. And he told her, daughter, your faith has made you well. You see, touching him did not heal her. The faith she had in getting close to him healed her. So touching his clothes did nothing. But faith got her there. Faith helped her do it. And there's three reasons why Jesus called her out and said, who touched me? Okay. Number one, he wanted her to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that she was healed. Think about this. How many times do we think something and then we second guess ourselves? So can you imagine if she's thinking, oh my gosh, I was healed. I was healed. This is great. I was healed. I was healed. And then she started thinking, oh my goodness, what if I wasn't? Or what if it just went away and it had nothing to do with me touching Jesus? I mean, those are things that can go through your head, right? I mean, I know that I second guess myself all the time. And I know that when I feel like Jesus has said something to me, I start thinking to myself, wait, hold on. Was that from Jesus? Was that from God? Or did I say that? Was I thinking that? Or was that really from God? So, I'm a second guesser. And I bet a bunch of people are too. But number two, everybody knew that she had this bleeding condition for 12 years. She wasn't welcome around people. She was unclean. So by this, if she came around and she suddenly said, I've been healed, y'all, I have been healed. Jesus healed me. I don't have to be out away from everybody anymore. Like I am part of this community again. Do you think people would believe her? I mean, this was a bleeding condition and not everybody knew that she was bleeding, right? Like, so she had to be a little forthcoming from this. But people also might be suspicious and they might not still believe her. They might still have that little voice in the back of their head that's like, how do we know this is true? Did this really happen? Or is she just making this up so she can come back with us, right? So there's so many things that can happen. But number three, he wanted her to know she did not steal this blessing. She received it in faith. She didn't just walk up and touch Jesus and get healed. Hallelujah. No, she walked up and she touched Jesus and he gave her healing. And it was because of her faith. No other reason. Her faith is what helped her heal. So here's my suggestion to people out there. Quit living in shame and take it to the one who can really help you heal, help you work through it. And I'm not going to say it's going to be an instant heal. You're going to pray and Jesus is just going to take it away. It'd be amazing if that's how it worked. But how often do you take something back? I know that I've prayed about something and then I take it back. I start worrying about it again, or I start getting angry at someone again or something, but keep giving it to him as many times as you have to. So she was considered unclean. But when she came to Jesus, think about this. Anytime any of us come to Jesus and we give him our sin. So in the Bible times, Jesus sat with sinners all the time. But did that make him dirty? Did her touching him make him unclean? No. It made her clean. It healed her. It made her clean. It did not make him dirty. So let Jesus come and make you clean. So healing comes with letting go of shame. It comes with letting go of anger, hurt, sin. So you can bring Jesus the whole truth, no matter what your past is, no matter what happened to you. Jesus is with you and he loves you and he forgives you. I do not care what you've done. I do not care what has happened to you. And Jesus doesn't either. He loves you no matter what. I know people who are like, I can't go to church because, like, Jesus, if he knew everything I did, y'all, he does. God knows everything that we've done. And he loves us anyway. God sent his son to die on the cross for your sins and my sins, knowing what selfish people we are, knowing the things that we would do wrong. Nobody's perfect. Nobody is unscathed from this life, right? Some things happen. So, Jesus, God is the great physician. Cry out to him about every part of your life. Let him take your suffering. Let him take every healing that you've ever tried and let him give you hope. So take the whole truth to him and allow Jesus to give you hope and allow Jesus to give you healing. So let me ask you, do you have a relationship, a personal relationship with Jesus Christ? If you don't and you would like to, please reach out to me because I would love to help you. And I know there are other people that would like to as well. So I hope that you got something out of today's lesson about shame. I hope it helps bring a little healing to you wherever you are in life. I hope it helps you understand that you are not alone and you don't have to keep it to yourself. You can bring it out and let Jesus help you heal. And I also, being a mental health professional myself, highly recommend therapy. Finding someone who can help you work through that because a lot of times people cannot work through it by themselves, and that's okay. And I want to tell you something else. Self-care is not selfish. So taking care of yourself is not selfish. We all need to take time to take care of ourselves. It's kind of like when you take a plane and they're like, you need to take care of yourself before you take care of the people next to you. That's 100% true. If you're not taking care of you, you're not there to take care of your family. You can't. You don't have the capacity to do it. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you got something out of it. And I don't know what the next podcast is going to be, but hopefully it's sooner than this one because you notice I take about like a month to do a podcast. But thank you so much for joining. And I've had people tell me that they listen to it. And thank you so much if you do. I would love for you to hit follow or subscribe or whatever platform you're on, whatever it tells you to do. But thank you again for being here. And I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye.